Welcome to another episode of Aliyah Money Talks. I am thrilled to have another show here, and I've got a lot of great episodes planned, including a big focus for Olim, which is employment. We're going to talk to a bunch of different Olim that have many different experiences, different jobs, different ideas around employment, and you should subscribe so you don't miss an episode. There's going to be a lot of great content. With that, I'm very excited to introduce today's guest, Daniel Rosehill. Daniel Rosehill is a marketing consultant, a YouTuber, absolutely brilliant writer, and welcome to the show, Daniel. Why don't you tell us about yourself, about your Aliyah journey, and a little bit about what you do?
Thanks, Aaron. I think this is the first time I've ever been described as a YouTuber. I'm not sure how to feel about that identity. I'm a rookie videographer, and I actually love YouTube. But I don't have that YouTube personality going yet. So I am on there. And yeah,
your videos are great.
They're a work in progress. I made Aliyah from Ireland 7 years ago. I live in Jerusalem. And as you said, marketing consulting is probably a better description for what I do now. I did start out doing really freelance writing for the first number of years. Because as you know, I'm sure that's such a big area in Israel. And then I sort of branched out a little bit more into the strategy area of marketing, as well as a little bit of writing here and there. But yeah, that's pretty much what I do. I'm at Atzmai. I have written about Atzmai issues, particularly as they relate to Israel. And yeah, I'd love to share some of the roller coaster ride.
So let's jump right into that. When you first, started to set up your own business in Israel, register as an Atzmai, what are some of the troubles that you ran into? What are the challenges to getting that process going?
Yeah, so the thing about registering as an Atzmai is you probably can do it all yourself. If you start at the Osek Patur level, which most people are unless you have to be an Osek Moshe, you probably can open your teak. You probably can do. I never did the reporting myself, but I did open the teak myself. However, what I would say is that if this is going to be your income, it's a balagan you don't need, and it's very risky. It's very easy to misreport stuff and create a real headache for yourself. So I've always used an accountant. I did actually start the teak opening process myself, and then later hired an accountant to do it. So for me, actually, it's always been, not always minus a year, it's been my full-time income. So yeah, there weren't really any difficulties. Most Atzmaim will be asked for a Hatzarat Hon at some stage. I was asked for mine in the first year, which is, a capital statement report. My accountant prepared that for me. As an Atzmai, there's just kind of a lot of little things you have to get right. And when you move up from Osek Patur to Osek Moshe, which if it's a full-time income for most people, you hope to get past that threshold, because it's only about 8,000 shekels per month. So if you're providing for a family, most people will probably have to be Osek Moshe if they're going down the Atzmai route sooner or later. At that stage, you have to file reports for MAM. That's, I'm just going to, I'm sure most people know these acronyms, but just in case anyone doesn't, that's VAT, tax. You have to do Mas Akhnasa. Atzmaim now have to have a pension, so you need to be contributing to a pension. And all those things are processes that it gets a bit more complicated as you go through it, not to speak anything of the American aspect, which I can't speak to, obviously.
Yeah, we're going to skip that for this conversation. U.S. tax is a whole different ballgame. Yeah. Anyways, so if we kind of look at your work, why have you decided to focus on the international market? Why would you recommend that people broaden out and not just focus at home? How is that? How's your experience been with that?
So I think that having an Atzmai teak open, right? Once you open your teak, and once you have got your green invoice, which is what I use for accounting, but whatever people want to use, and once you have English as your language, now whether you can be doing UX work or sales consulting or marketing work or whatever, there's a lot of limitations that come to being an Atzmai. You don't get your employer handling your pension. There's a lot of disadvantages, but there is one big advantage, and that's that you can work with clients really anywhere in the world, except if they're one of the officially defined enemy states that Israel has, and I don't think probably most people are going to be in that
No
situation.
Iran, no North Korea, right?
Right, exactly. You're not. Unless you have like unless you're doing content writing for the North Korean nuclear program, you're probably okay. So for most people, I think there is an advantage to looking beyond the Israeli market. I haven't ever sought to exclude Israel. Just that I've sort of worked with other clients in other geographies, and what I've written about is really saying to people, a lot of people will say working with foreign clients is too complicated. There's currency fluctuations, and they don't know if it's legally okay. Again, I can't talk about the US situation, but I've worked for clients in Denmark, Hong Kong, Singapore, the US, the UK, Ireland, a few other countries, and I haven't had any real issues, except for the fact that the US dollar rate has gotten worse. And that then becomes a question of, okay, do I need to adjust my rates for my client? And that can be as easy as just giving them a new quote, because you don't need to tell them that you're doing it because the currency has gone against your favor. But I don't think I haven't had any complications. And I think that it opens literally opens a whole world of opportunity for English speakers based in Israel, because we have the language barrier for Hebrew. So this is one of the advantages that we have, and I think it's a pity not to use it by just focusing exclusively on Israel.
On a bigger world, right? So if we nailed it down on that issue as far as exchange rates, one of the ways you deal with that is kind of being a little bit more willing to adjust your quotes, your price quotes to potential clients as exchange rates adjust. That's kind of the way you mitigate that.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's not a huge difference. I mean, the US dollar maybe, but the level of scale I'm at, which is literally a one-person business, it's a microscopic business unit, maybe charging, let's say, $1,000 a month to one client, right? It's not a huge difference if you're getting payment over TransferWise and Wise.com now. So I actually haven't really done that. I have thought about it. But I think it's something that you could do, absolutely, or you could just probably be transparent and say, look, I'm billing in USD, or you could fix the rate. Another thing that I've heard you can do is fix the rate in shekels, and your client will do the conversion into their currency and send that across. So there's various ways to get around it. It's not a reason not to do it, in my opinion.
Right. And I guess when you're trying to appeal to people beyond Israel, how do you kind of shape your writing, your marketing efforts to be a little bit more international?
Sure, that's a really good question. So I would probably say it's having a mixture of, if you're looking to do this, it's probably not a good idea. I would probably not recommend saying, we're here to help Israeli startups market to the world, because you kind of just said that's who you work with. It's not an approach for everyone. Some people are going to be very well served by focusing in Israel. Some people actually really like it. They don't like the remote aspect of freelancing. They want to be able to visit their clients, and I think that's totally fine. If you're not looking to, I wouldn't say pigeonhole yourself or just work with Israel, what would probably be helpful would be a couple of case studies and clients who aren't Israeli. A lot of people have Wix, Payoneer, etc., who farm out a lot of work on their website and all Israeli references. And probably if you could have one or two non-Israeli clients, just to show that you're open to working with different geographies, you could mention, I work with clients in different countries, and that's another way of communicating. I've never hid the fact that I'm based in Israel from any client that I've worked with, but I think if you show that you're open to working with all geographies, that'll send the right message to those potential clients.
I don't know if there's a question you want to answer, but have you ever gotten any sort of pushback or anger or resentment? Oh, I don't want to do business. Oh, you're in Israel. I didn't realize you're in Israel.
I've never had it openly, and I don't think anyone would be stupid enough to say in an email, "You're based in Israel." That's it. Because that would create a scandal for their company. I would say I have suspected a couple of times where deals went, deals. I'm not using this to sound like $1 million contracts, potential freelancing opportunities that kind of went sour for no reason that made sense to me, and I kind of suspected maybe the Israel thing. There's definitely the potential for political perceptions. I think it's more likely. I think this is a challenge we all face, the people based in Israel. You're a foreign entity. For someone based in the US, they might not know you're actually an English speaker or you're a native English speaker if you do marketing work. And, they might say, well, why would we want to send this work out to Israel? Like, it's a place in the desert. I think those perceptions are old-fashioned. I don't think it's that common to have them anymore, but it's definitely, I reckon that's probably more of an explanation. So I think the Israel branding is great in the tech world. Sure, there are people who really dislike Israel. They might not work with you for that reason, but I don't think it's too much of an issue for
widespread.
people.
Yeah. Got it. Great. So, one of the other issues with being an Atzmai is kind of managing billing and bookkeeping and collections and these kind of challenges. Obviously you spoke about the help that you get from an accountant, but speak more to how you manage your billing and that kind of thing.
Sure. So I've been using Green Invoice for the past probably 4 years at this point. I lose track of how long I've been doing this. They recently upgraded their UI. It's beautiful. It's really, really nice.
Yeah.
That's it. I mean, they don't have an English interface. I, for a while, did when their English support wasn't so good, by which I mean that, like, you'd create an invoice and sometimes, I think it was an old bug, it would send out in Hebrew to an English client. So for a while, I used Wave, one of the, international accounting softwares in parallel, and I didn't send the Wave invoices, receipts to my clients. That ended up being complicated, and Green Invoice has gotten a lot better. The English works really well. So that's really all I use. I did start working with the bookkeeper only in the last month or two. I did it for myself after becoming Osek Moshe. I did it myself for a year, and I would kind of recommend against that because the rules for what you can deduct for VAT and what you can deduct for Mas Haknasa are slightly different. And bookkeepers know all these nuances. You can either end up being not compliant and getting fined, or screwing up your deductions, deducting more than you should or deducting less than you should. So I did it for myself for a year, and then when I took on a couple more clients, I've always been kind of in this weird gray zone of feeling uncertain. Do I want to be an Atzmai? Do I want to go back to a job? So I think part of that was not committing to bookkeeping as an extra expense. But I did that recently, so I'm sort of in the Atzmai area for the moment, and it's definitely, it's like anything. If you can afford it for your business, it's another headache saved. So I think if you can afford a bookkeeper, it's definitely so that's what I do now. I just send my receipts and invoices into a folder, and the bookkeeper does all the reporting. They can actually do it for you for Mas Haknasa and MAM, and you can even set up a Horat Keva for automatic deduction. So you're really kind of going from doing everything yourself, setting yourself calendar alerts. On the 16th, I need to do my MAM report. I need to do my Mas Haknasa report every 2 months, mikdamot, to just putting in your stuff up to Google Drive and someone does it for you. So it's really a huge difference from a work standpoint.
It frees up your time a lot. So So if you like, you're dealing with international clients, you're dealing with time zones all over the world. I mean, how do you manage that? Do you, especially if you're dealing with lots of different time zones? It's not like you're just dealing with California. You're not just dealing with Australia. How do you deal with all kinds of different clients all over the world?
Yeah, so I've never actually really had like a ton of clients at any one time. I think the most I've had has been 5 or 6 at one time. I know some people work with like 10, 15 clients. I find that very difficult. And typically a couple of those were Israeli, and then maybe 1 or 2 clients overseas. I mean, Israel's time zone, right? We're GMT +2, so we're on the same time zone as Eastern Europe, which isn't so helpful. From us, it's good for Israelis for offshoring work because it makes it an easy time zone to send out development work to, and that's become a big thing. South Africa is actually on the same time zone, if I'm not mistaken. We've got parts of Russia, and I think that's about it. So if we think about what time zones are good to work with, the difference with Europe is only 1 or 2 hours. -2 is UK and Ireland. They're -2. Central Europe's -1. If you go plus, to get over to India and China, they're a few hours ahead in Australia. So certain time zones are kind of hard. I've had a couple of clients in the US, one on EST. PST, Pacific time, is really hard to work with. And
very
I know there are
that,
people who I think end up having a really bad quality of life as Olim because they go down this route. They, for whatever reason, pick up work on the West Coast. And, they're Thursday nights where they're up till like midnight or 1 in the morning doing calls, whatever. So the West Coast is the one I feel a bit shaky about. I think the only
Right.
solution is what's called, asynchronous communication. If you have clients who will work with you by email and they don't need calls that frequently, that's one solution. But I think if it's that's a hard time
Right.
zone. Australia and New Zealand is kind of tricky as well. So,
As
from
well.
Israel, we have time zones that work well, we have time zones that work less well, and we also have async. So if you can find clients who are happy to do Loom, what else is there? Loom, email, whatever, even send you WhatsApp voice notes, and that they don't need to meet that regularly over Zoom. That can be
Right, and schedule meetings earlier in the day for them, which is not too late for you and stuff like that.
Right,
can make
right.
it work.
They're kind of workarounds, but I think it's for me. I just kind of acknowledge that it's a difficult time zone, and unless the clients I can tell are going to be flexible to understand it, they know how big the time zone difference is. They're okay with it. I'd rather not do it for the most part.
Very cool. So to kind of sum it up, what are some of the other major downsides of being self-employed? Being an atzmai, working in your own home office. What are the different kind of things you have to warn people that are thinking about, getting rid of their 9-to-6 job and becoming self-employed?
I mean, there's a lot of potential limitations, and I think it's important to be transparent about that. So, one of them is you mentioned working in a home office. Some people would hate that. I personally don't mind it, but some people hate the idea of working from home. I actually struggle more with the disconnection thing, which is kind of when I find only remote relationships kind of hard to deal with. So I'm actually okay with working from a home office. And this is actually a good reason for working with Israeli clients versus international ones. Even if you see your clients once every 2 weeks, Aaron, you've met Aaron, you've had coffee with Aaron, it makes it a whole different relationship. So I'm actually a big fan of that, increasingly, the hybrid work model. Working from home, some people hate it. We've got all the administrative stuff. You have to pay both sides of your Batuach Leumi. You can't get perks like a Karen Hishtalmut paid for by the employer. You have to pay for your own accounting. You have to factor in expenses. The time zone. And more than that, you're kind of a disposable asset for companies, right? That's a lot of companies hire atzmaim because they want to fill in manpower for a project and then get rid of them. So the trick is kind of avoiding clients like that. Depending on your industry, that can be tough. I find freelance writing, to be honest, a very difficult way to make a good living. I find shifting out of that was a big step forward for me. So, but if you're a freelance Java developer, it could be a really, really well paid area, and that's not a concern. So it's going to be different for different people, really. And then there's little things like, as an employee, you mightn't get invited to the office Yom Kef, you mightn't get a bottle of wine for the Chagim, and those little things, those are actually small things that can give people a real sense of belonging to a company. So going into this, I think you need to really think about all those points. And that's another reason why I think community building for Atzmaim, which you have a little bit of in Israel, can actually be really helpful. So it's definitely a lot to handle, and it's the harder path. It's easier to be a Sahir, I would say, in pretty much any circumstance.
Okay, so then just I'm going to ask you on the flip side, kind of some of the advantages to being self-employed and being your own boss in some sense.
Right. So that aspect of being your own boss thing has never actually really sort of appealed. Like, I think that's kind of a misconception in that as an atzmai, you're working for your clients. So you're always working for somebody at the end of the day. The advantage I would say is that there's a professional advantage in that you might get different work experience than you would get in Israel. And that comes back to the international thing. There's no reason, and I think this would be great for a lot of people. You can find a client in London and you might need to visit them, 2 times a year, but that could actually be a great experience, right? You get on a plane for a few hours, and that really kind of shakes things up a bit in terms of it might be good for your career to kind of dip into the Israeli market and also dip into the international market. And one advantage I would say is there can actually be stability as much as there is instability. If you have an atzmai, you never have all your eggs in one basket. If you can do it correctly, if you can have a good mix of clients, you can survive the loss of 1 or 2 clients. Versus if you get fired from a job, that's it. You need to start from scratch. So yeah, there definitely are advantages, and I guess it really depends on what people are looking for. A lot of I think the majority of people are happier with a job. They want the tlush sachar at the end of the
Stability.
month. You want everything taken care of. And other people, I don't know, that's my, for whatever reason. I think for me, I kind of fell between the cracks in the Israeli job market to an extent. I think if you're an English speaker marketing, I find the opportunities kind of limited in-house. Like, you know, your average Israeli company might have one marketing person, and it's hard to kind of see what the path forward is. So for some people, I think their career aspirations are better matched by actually going down the Atzmai route. But yeah, it's a more difficult journey for sure.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to end it, because I think so many Olim are concerned about, where do I see fit? And there are creative solutions. There are all kinds of different opportunities from Israel. It's getting easier now, I think, that the world has become
I think it's
more
getting
remote.
easier, and I think I personally really support it with all those like disclaimers that I said. I think it actually is a great way to put Israel on the map. The more people are doing this, and we talked a lot about the international aspect, the more people do this, the more companies in London say, hey, I worked with this guy Aaron on my finances, he was really sharp, they had a good experience, they recommend you. It's actually in all of our benefit. The more Israeli Atzmaim work with the world, we build community among ourselves, I think it can be a really, really good, we can provide another solution for for Olim Chadashim, English speakers, to make this work.
Yeah.
And I think it's whatever works best for the person.
Awesome. So tell us more where we can follow you and where we can see your, your great writings, videos, and all kinds of new ideas that you're coming out with soon.
Right. I told you I wanted to come on to this to just to share a bit about that's my experience. So I'm not selling anything. All I would the only thing I will push is my YouTube channel, because that's my current. I did a lot of writing, and I always was intrigued by the idea of video, and I think I just didn't have the self-confidence until recently to try to pull it off. So I'm on YouTube. The channel is very uncreatively called Daniel Rosehill. So it's just my name.
Nice.
But you can watch my somewhat wacky videos about various subjects like technology. I work with Shimshon Lashinsky, Jerusalem's favorite food influencer.
Perfect. Oh, yeah.
So it's a real mixed bag. I'll probably do a more focused channel in the future. But for now, check out my YouTube channel if you're interested.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for coming on the show, and have a wonderful day.
Thanks very much, Aaron. I appreciate it.